Welcome to another episode of Digital Dexterity. Today, I'm joined by Abby Zemrock from the Cleveland Metroparks. Abby, would you mind introducing yourself for our listeners real quick?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Wes. I'm the Director of Web and Application Services here at the Cleveland Metroparks, part of our IT division. I've worked with Americaneagle on a couple of projects now, so really happy to be here.
Really appreciate you joining us. I think we have several years of history together now with the way that we've worked together on your Kentico project, the primary domain and several other web properties, all powered by Kentico. And I think when we first met, you were kind of standing on the path, looking down the road of what does the future of Kentico hold for the Metro Parks. And we are now on the other side of that journey. And we're going to sort of unpack this for our listeners, right? The history of Cleveland Metroparks, their usage of Kentico, some composable components, and Abby, how you specifically think about composable and how it's enriched user experience. Explore some challenges along the way, right? No project is complete without some obstacles and some risk management. And then, of course, some outcomes, and I'd love our listeners to have just some advice straight from somebody who's done the work yourself. So first and foremost, I want to just congratulate really both of our teams, I think, for a successful project. We're really quite proud of the relationship we've formed. We're really quite proud of the work that we've done together. I know there were a lot of folks involved on your end. We had a lot of folks involved on our end. So right off the bat, I just want to say, job well done. Congratulations for a successful project. And with that, maybe let's dive into the kind of the meat of the conversation. So if you don't mind, Abby,
Sounds great.
would you give us some background on Metroparks, how you think about digital, and how you've used Kentico historically?
Yeah, absolutely, Wes. Metroparks is kind of a unique entity in that we are a government agency and a park district, but we also have a zoo, we have golf courses, we have beaches, we offer retail programming and events. We're kind of a very heavily loaded park district, if you want to think of us that way. We're a
Sure.
very unique agency. And as such, our website packs a lot of functionality. So, this was a really challenging project and it was a very fun, interesting project because of who we are and what we do. I would say our approach to digital is very guest focused. We're very much
Right.
we're a constituent driven agency. So all of our web products, are from our website to our e-commerce to our mobile app, they need to be very user friendly and guest focused in everything we do. That's across all of our business verticals here.
And I love that focus too, because of the way Metro Parks has sort of found its shape. You are, as you've said, you are a zoo, you are the golf courses, you are, several other attractions, maybe is the right word. And each of those probably has separate defined audiences that all
Yes.
overlap to some degree. So focusing in on each of those individual guests, their specific needs as it pertains to each of those individual attractions. I mean, I love that approach because I think your focus too is also kind of the technology that's powering all of it. And I think the word that's come up several times since we've been preparing and having this conversation about this conversation, right, is this word of modernization, right? You've sort of modernized the experience, modernized the technology. Tell us a little bit more about what that journey has been like.
Sure. As you mentioned, we are a legacy Kentico customer, so both our public website and our intranet have been through several versions of the product. We were really interested in this latest redesign, in making it more usable, more flexible, more responsive, just better performance, because we're asking more and more of our customers. We're asking them to play golf, to attend our programs and special events, to interact with us on social media, to the e-commerce and retail experiences. We're always adding new things here at the Metroparks, so we really need our tech tools to kind of follow that pattern and that expanse. So, going into this project, we were really looking at, how do we make better experiences across all of these things that we offer here? And also for our staff, how can we create efficiencies,
Right.
build up that knowledge base?
Right.
Someone like me who works in IT,
Yep.
I've worked in a content management system, but a naturalist in the parks may not have, or someone who is a zoo staff member who's, responsible for content. So we were really looking to how could we make a better internal experience as well?
Yeah. Yeah. The team here, I remember many conversations with them as we were like trying to put form to some of the things that you're describing, right? How do we solve some of the things that you're describing as we're in flight? And like one of the recollections I have is engaging with the team here in basically a content architecture exercise that you had a lot of different content types that almost
Mhm.
all served the same purpose. And by sort of putting these things under the microscope, we almost tried to solve both of the things that you just mentioned. A better, more coherent guest experience, but also a better, more efficient admin experience, because you're not almost hunting and pecking for all of the individual content types inside of the content management system.
Yes.
Which I think was just kind of a neat, maybe practical exercise of how do we put those goals into the trajectory of what we're trying to do together. And I think you also left a note in some of the material we prepared together about like real time content management. I think that probably factors it. Do you want to talk a little bit about that as well?
Yeah, so this was kind of a unique feature of the site, but also a challenge that we had to work with was so much of our information is really geared toward giving people real-time conditions of our park district. So a couple of examples of that, let's say you're a golfer and you're interested in what courses closest to you
Sure.
you can play
Right.
on any given morning. We're in Northeast Ohio, so weather is a definite factor here. We put out course status based on things like frost. Is it a frost situation where the course may be open or closed based on temperature? Trail usage is another aspect that we is very popular here at the Metro Parks. We
Sure.
offer hundreds of miles of paved and natural surface trails. Mountain bikers, they're looking for can they go ride that day? And it could be closed, it could be open. Some of those things change hourly potentially based on weather, based on other factors. So
Right.
our site is really kind of that landing point for people to understand how they can engage with our physical properties. So we're very cognizant of is our information timely? And when we mean timely, it can be very timely.
Yeah.
Storms come in, they close the beaches,
Great point.
other
Yep.
pieces like that. So, really, our interaction digitally is based on giving people the information they need to make those decisions. Where am I taking my family today based on the conditions that I know? So, that was something that we put in our, project scope right up front as this is something that we want Kentico to be able to handle.
That's great. Yeah. I mean, it really speaks to like, I don't know, the unique governance model that you require to satisfy guest needs and satisfy guest expectations. Because I don't know, it's raining here in Chicago this morning, right? I would have Googled, is the beach open today? Right. And to be able to land on a page governed by the site and see that information in real time. I mean, that's really powerful and impactful for how how I might have been planning to spend my day.
Right.
Absolutely. Cool. So some of the other goals, I think, apart from maybe some of the content management, were some of the larger architectural goals as well,
Mhm.
right? As part of this modernization and migration effort. Talk to us a little bit about your philosophy on the composable approach that we arrived at for the current state of the site.
Yeah, so I think it kind of came about as a happy accident to some degree.
Sure,
Um,
sure. I'd
our
agree with that.
previous site was very large, and it had accumulated a lot of functionality over the years just as our business needs changed. So
Yep,
we had built custom components to the site to handle new things as they came online for the parks. So
yep.
there were a lot of functions that we were looking for, how do we retain this as we modernize our CMS? And we kind of got to that point where we realized, the times have changed enough, and there are new services and new products available. It kind of made sense to step back and take a look at, do we need to rebuild this site 100% in Kentico, or can we look at a more composable structure? And by that, I mean, can we layer tools and services into our product that do individual things well? So e-commerce is a good example of that. We had started down the path of bringing in outside third-party e-commerce tools a couple of years ago with the addition of a Shopify store. So we brought that online, we integrated it with Kentico, and then that was working pretty well. So we looked to do more of that. We had plans to bring on a new ticketing system for our zoo, and we were looking at different products to manage programs and facility rentals for our parks vertical. So in looking through our options, we realized, we may not need to customize this fully in Kentico. There might be a better way. So we kind of looked at it as what what tools are available that do individual functions well, and how can we leverage those as part of the overall architecture?
Which is phenomenal, because I think we often get questions of, "Can you build X, Y, or Z?" And our answer is, "Yes, it's going to be anywhere from $1 to $1,000,000. But by the way, we have this great partner that does commerce, and we can more accurately predict what that's going to or how that is going to impact your greater project, because there's this build versus buy philosophy that's been
Mhm.
introduced as web and digital, and the products that satisfy specific needs have grown and evolved over the years. And so to see someone like yourself who, again, is like looking down the road, how do we build sustainable digital experience for our guests? Well, Wes could build it for $1,000,000, but what if I just buy it, right? And that way we can stitch together these composable components that each build value inside of the digital arena for the guests. And in this case, like real value, transactional value, in the context of Shopify and facilitating payments and all that. I heard actually this morning an ad, so this is timely. Shop Pay in Shopify increases uh, transactions by 50% of any shop that uses it. I have a hard time believing that stat, but I read it on the internet, so it's got to be true. Talk to us a little bit about like how you involved other stakeholders in those decisions as well, right? Because something like onboarding Shopify, that has an impact on back office business operations, payment, security, your municipal status even. I remember exploring that with you, right? Your municipal status and the way you collect payments. So talk to us about like how did you navigate the internal decision-making processes as part of these decisions?
So we are very collaborative here at the Metroparks across different departments. We in IT, we do have a strategy committee that we engage with regularly for these types of technical decisions. They are a cross-functional group. They represent all aspects of the park. They were instrumental in providing feedback on the site. We did a few meetings and workshops where we were talking through what are the benefits of the existing site, what are maybe pain points. We really did some deep dives. Another group I'd really like to call out is our marketing team.
Yeah.
They were able to help us with some research, market research around personas, and identify some real customer journey information that we were able to bring into the project early in discovery. We sat down with members of your team and our team and did a presentation on who our audiences are, who are we trying to reach, through our parks, through our golf, through our zoo, and it really helped to kind of put those figures in mind as we were building out different types of functionality into the site. That was, I would say, probably the most instrumental stakeholder involvement early on, was just
Yeah.
getting that information in front of the team before anything was built, so that we could consider it was keeping the customer front and center from the start of the project and really throughout.
Yeah, having those North Star discussions early on is like, this is the guiding light. This is what we're after. We may meander, but that's the direction we're going. I love that. But I think you also had maybe considered this a little bit of a challenge too, right? I think what you did a lot with a little, I think is some of the framing you had shared before. Talk to us about what that's like as well, navigating some of the maybe small team or focus constraints.
I would say we are kind of typical in the government space in that we're a small shop. We have a fairly tight knit team of development staff. We also have a lot of competing priorities. There's a lot going on every day in the parks, whether it's special events that need, technical and audiovisual support. We've got web development projects. There's always a lot going on. So, really, just making that intentional time to be able to sit down and consider this from end to end. A web rebuild is a long haul effort,
Yeah.
and being able to keep consistent resources on that. But I think, we had a lot of strengths to pull into. We do have, a market research group and, folks that are focused heavily in the data and analytics space, and they were able to lend a lot of value. So it's a balance. You always strike that balance of how do we get work done quickly, but also kind of keep your eyes on the prize for the long haul. And this was definitely one of those.
And if you were to go back and do it all again, what would you do different?
Ooh, that's a tough one. In some ways, I am doing it all again because we're rebuilding our intranet.
There you go. That's a good
So,
answer, right? Yeah.
I would say, we're gonna leverage a lot of what we learned on the public site.
Okay.
We're learning a lot with experience every day. My team, as we speak, they're back at the office doing some customization. We're only 3 months into the new site, and they're already finding ways to sort of build and optimize and take what we've started and grow it. So, it's been a lot of fun to get into the weeds of what the product offers and see how we can build new components and just create cool stuff. So, I think some of what we built here for the external site,
Yeah.
we'll be looking to sort of replicate or improve upon that when we get into the intranet.
And, at least in the conversations you and I have had, I think, like, the outcomes you've achieved as part of those things, like, maybe anecdotal so far, but, I'd be interested to know, like, what outcomes have you seen? Like, what results have you seen from this project, intranet or public facing?
So, yeah, a couple of observations I've had. One, we're noticing just a lot more speed and performance.
Love that.
Pages are loading much quicker. The new product is just it's cleaner. It's easier to maintain. It's just working really well. I've had feedback from users, so folks that we trained in our initial um, batch of content editors. They're coming back and saying, that's really really easy to use. It's intuitive. It's not clunky or hard to navigate. We're getting some good feedback from the user end. And then, from a guest perspective, the usability seems to be there. We're not getting as many emails to webmaster asking how to do things
Yeah.
or finding information. I think what we've got is a little bit easier to navigate in terms of the architecture, the information structure. Um, our lighthouse accessibility scores went way up. That's sort of a data driven point, but we are seeing better web accessibility now than we did previously. So, all good things so far. I think we're still learning and kind of growing parts of the base site. We started with a baseline that we're now trying to customize and build upon, but so far so good.
That lighthouse one, I love that, actually, because, while the back end of the site is, like, almost entirely rewired, right? To leverage experience by Kentico and its strengths as a software DXP product. The front end experience, like this, if I use our project management terminology, or the scope of the project, right? uh, Accounted for effectively reusing the old experience on top of that new technology. So we always try and sort of enhance and polish that, but I love that you're seeing better lighthouse scores and accessibility results. It's a huge focus for us, not just as an agency, but just as, I don't know, a responsible member of the internet, to produce those sorts of outcomes. So that's, I don't know, that's a really neat outcome too. I love that. And then, I love to honor you for a second here too, because you guys earned Site of the Month with Kentico, at the completion of this project. So, incredible job, very well done. I don't know. It's just something really cool to be proud of. So good work.
Thank you. Yeah, we were really excited to see that. I think it was we were proud of what came out of the build, but it's always great to be recognized by the product itself
Yeah,
that you've done well with their base. So I felt good about that.
cool. So, maybe as we trend towards the end of our discussion here, I'd love your advice for our listeners, folks that are maybe thinking about what the next generation of their own site looks like, or maybe they're thinking about, do I migrate? Do I rebuild? Do I upgrade? Right? These are all the decisions that we have to make in a fast moving technology content management system environment. What advice would you have for our listeners, sitting in those seats, thinking about their own project?
It's a great question. I'd say three things really come to mind. First, don't be afraid to kind of deconstruct your site.
Mm.
You know, take it apart, kind of look at everything it does independently. And then if you find you're going in the direction of a lot of heavy customization or, kind of not knowing what to do with particular bits and pieces, see if there's a service out there, if there's a tool that does it natively that you can integrate. Um, I think the tendency was to rebuild websites like we did in the past, where every website was sort of this all encompassing behemoth of a thing. That's not necessarily the case anymore. There's a lot of wonderful microservices and tools and products, and there's just a plethora of things available to you that do what they do really well. So, how can you leverage things natively and bring them into what you're trying to build? And then, your CMS can be pretty skinny. It can sit on top of other services as an ecosystem. You can have this, I think of it as sort of a constellation of products where
I like that.
you
Yeah,
have a homepage on top of other things that can be interacted with. Um, which brings me to point 2, which is really as you're making decisions, keep the guest front and center.
mm,
Make sure that everything you're adding is in fact a value add. Is it making something easier? Is it making something more efficient? Is it something they want? Or are you just trying to kind of work around something? I think that's a key decision point is just, your customer's got to be front and center at the, every step of the way. And then third, this goes for guests, end users, and stakeholders internally. It's just communicating along the way. As you're making decisions, it's that proactive, regular communication through those trusted channels. As we were, I'll give an example of when we decided to move our e-commerce off of Kentico and into third-party tools. That's a big change for customers who have been purchasing through your CMS for years. We leveraged our marketing team. They were wonderful in creating messages, in disseminating those through our weekly newsletters. Really hitting those audiences repeatedly with, here's a change that's coming, here's what it means for you, and here's how you can optimize the new experience. Just really making sure people understood what was coming, what they needed to do, and when. So those three things I think really helped us greatly in this transition. Circling back to what you said at the beginning, it was so much fun to work with your team and our team together on this project, and I think we've got a lot more to do with our intranet, so it's going to be a fun ride.
okay, great. Well, Abby, this has been a phenomenal discussion. Really appreciate it. I think it's been a fun couple years together. I think we've done a lot. This is just a really cool outcome. So thank you for taking the time to explore it with us as part of the
Yep.
Digital Dexterity series.
Thank you for inviting me. This was a fun project. I'm actually sitting in our new podcast studio that we
Oh,
just built.
nice.
So it's kind of a neat thing for me to do too. So really
Love it.
happy to be here today.
Love it. Love it. And to all our listeners, thanks so much. We'll catch you on the next one.